today is going to be what I read in January, February TBR, heartwarming, cozy, just comforting book. This might be the best book I read all year. There's footnotes in this book. Every book I read of hers I really enjoy. A few books that are on my like unofficial TBR for February. Hello and welcome to a new video. Welcome if you're new here. Hi, I'm Andrea. I'm a full-time university writing instructor and a part-time content creator and indie author. Welcome back if you're one of my lovely returning friends. It is great to have you all here. Welcome to a book chat video. These are going to become, I think, if some of you like them, I think this will become a semi-regular, maybe not quite monthly, but every other month recurring feature here on this channel as a bonus video on the occasional Friday, like probably the first Friday of each month if I can be that organized. I had so much fun filming my best reads of 2024 and reading goals of 2025 video, and I'm really into reading at the moment. Like, I was in a really bad reading slump around the like middle to almost end of 2024, and then by the end of 2024 I'd kind of broken through that, and January I have definitely broken through that. I don't think I'm going to keep up the pace I set in January, so these might not be an every single month video, but I would like to do a what I read this month or what I've read in the past 2 or 3 months. Like, we'll see how much I can read each month, and my thought is when I get up to like 8 to 12 books, we'll do a video. And they'll probably be a little bit different each time. Today is going to be what I read in January and a kind of February TBR, would like to read in February kind of a thing. So we'll cover both. We'll just see how this goes. We'll see if you all like it. We'll see if anyone watches these. Whenever I do book related videos, they typically don't tend to perform as well. So if you do like these videos, please let me know in the comments and give the video a thumbs up, and we will just dive right in. So I do have my Goodreads reading challenge pulled up on my phone. I read 3 physical books in January and then several Kindle books. So I read 11 books in January. I still can't quite believe I read that much. And I think a big thing that helped was that for the first half of January, I was on winter break and was not working full time. And I also wasn't doing Vlogmas anymore. And like, I just had a bit more time and I was needing it. January hit and like December was great, January hit, and my stress levels just started rocketing upwards for a variety of reasons, and escaping into fictional worlds has been my coping mechanism throughout this month, or throughout January, and also into February now. So I read 11 books. I had set my goal for 2025 for 44 books total, so I'm 25% of the way to my goal. I am going to slow down, and both I just know I'm going to slow down in reading, but also I will intentionally be slowing myself down. I don't know that it's healthy for me to read 11 books in a month every single month. For January it was fine. Going forward, I think I'm aiming for like 6, maybe 7 in February. So we'll see. So the first book I read, for the Kindle books I'll put the cover up on the screen, but the first book I read was Snug in Iceland. This is by Victoria Walker. It's book 1 in a series. I do want to read the other books in the series because I really enjoy the location and backdrop of Iceland. The first book is set in Reykjavik, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. She definitely leans into Iceland as an environment, as a backdrop and setting for the story. Definitely made me want to visit Iceland and Reykjavik in particular. And yeah, I just thought the plot idea was really cute, and it was just a super cozy, snuggly, warm, wintry book. Like, it's set in winter in Iceland, so it's got all those like wintry vibes, but it just feels so cozy and romantic, and I loved the romance. And yeah, I'm not going to go into all of the plot lines as much because I feel like that's going to make this video long. If my reactions to any of these videos and if the covers of these books look appealing, definitely check it out. Look up the description and see if you want to read it. The second book I read is A Little Place in Prague. This is by Julie Caplin, who also publishes under the pen name Jules Wake. I've read some Julie Caplin books. I've read some Jules Wake books. She never disappoints. And I think this year is going to be a year where I really dive deep into her backlist and just read more. She does a lot of travel related fiction, so each book set in a different foreign location, which I love, and some of them are very like seasonally appropriate. So she's got wintry ones, she's got springtime ones, she's got summery ones. I don't know that I've seen any that like look particularly autumnal, but probably. I just really like her writing. The stories are just cozy, heartwarming romances. Nothing too dramatic or heart-wrenching. Very realistic situations that the majority of us can relate to on some level. I loved the setting of Prague for this book. I just want to read more books set in Prague now. I've been to Prague, not in winter. This book totally makes me want to go back in winter, but it just made me want to go back to Prague in general. I just absolutely loved it. The flat that the main characters live in reminds me, the way that it was described just reminds me so much of the flat that my friend was staying in when I went to visit her in Prague. And so I could just picture their apartment really clearly. Yeah, all the locations. Oh, I loved it. Heartwarming, cozy, just comforting book. Going to the other end of the spectrum, the next book I read, not a cozy romance. This is Last Rituals, a novel of suspense by this wonderful author whose name I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce because I know I will butcher it. This is also set in Iceland, written by an Icelandic author, so this is a translation. The translation was really good, really well done. The book is set in 2005, and I think it was published in 2007. I will say there were some little things, some what were essentially throwaway comments by some of the characters that I just don't think they would fly now without another character correcting them or without a narrator kind of showing that this comment is not appropriate. There was one, what we would now consider an ableist slur, although some could argue back in 2005 it would also have been considered an ableist slur at the time, and fatphobic comments, which just did not make you think too kindly about the characters who said these things. But these are also characters that are main characters or are related to the main characters, so you kind of feel like you're supposed to like them. So like, I did not find the main character likable, not just for the comment, but just in general. Didn't find her entirely likable, but the mystery was compelling. The writing was really well done. The pacing, the momentum, the way that you're kind of carried through the story was all really interesting. The history is fascinating. So this one deals with kind of the occult and a mysterious murder that looks like it's tied to the occult, but gets into the witch trials, not just in Europe in the 1600s, but also witch trials in Iceland, which was really, really fascinating and made me want to learn more about the history. So that balanced out and like compensated for the fairly unlikable main character. So I would be willing to read another book by this author, especially if she has something that's not this same character. I know this is a series. There are more mysteries with this main character, but overall, I really enjoyed it. Every book I'm talking about today, I gave 5 stars because I give 5 stars to everything unless I absolutely can't stand it, and then you will never hear me talk about it. The fourth book. I'm gonna go out on a limb here, and I'm gonna say not only was this the best book I read in January, this might be the best book I read all year. I think this will definitely be top 10 of the entire year. Most likely top 5, possibly even top 3, and possibly top. I have slept on this book for a long time. I mean, it feels like forever, but it only came out in 2022. 2022 feels like so long ago now though. So Babel. let's just talk for a second about Babel. I will limit myself, I promise. Babel by R.F. Kuang. Oh my gosh, this was amazing. If you have been interested in this book but have been intimidated by the size, or if you've been put off by some of the reviews, I would still give it a try. The negative reviews I have seen, they're clearly not understanding this book. Like, I just, if you don't like this book, I don't know what to say to you. I really, really don't. I just thought the history, even though it's set in an like alternate universe of our Earth, it's like an alternate England in the 1820s, it still has so much history of England in the 1820s and the world in the 1820s. Just read it. Oh my gosh. The fantasy was great. The like world building was fantastic. As someone, it's set in Oxford, but in alternate Oxford, and as someone who has spent a lot of time in Oxford, like I could picture it so perfectly. Like she just has managed to like carve out this little space to put the fictionalized Babel Institute into, but other than that, the Oxford she's talking about, if you have spent any time in Oxford, you will be able to picture exactly where the characters are. So I loved that. The commentary on race and class and imperialism and colonialism is just beautiful and amazing. It's so spot on. The commentary on academia, honestly, I think that's the part that I loved the most. As someone who works in higher education, who has 3 graduate degrees, the commentary on the state of education, like even though it's set in 1832, it is still talking about doing academic research and academic studies and earning these specialized degrees at any university around the world. I know that the author is a PhD, she might have finished by now, but a PhD at Yale. And oh, yeah. Read it for the commentary on class and gender and imperialism and colonialism and all of those things, but also read it for the commentary on education and academia, and just read it. I will stop because I know I'm going to talk about this book a lot more in like future months and future book videos. That just, oh my god, it's amazing. So then we switched back to Kindle for a couple books. I read The Rewind by Allison Winn Scotch. Really enjoyed this. There's a lot of physical comedy in it. I'd say if I was comparing it to a movie, it probably has elements, even though I haven't seen all of these movies, but just from what I've seen in the previews, it's got elements of like Bridesmaids, The Hangover, those sorts of like really intense physical comedy. Funny, engaging. I liked the book. I did like the book. I think I'd like it as a Netflix film better. I feel like some of the comedy would probably have been funnier if I was seeing it than reading it. I do think it's really hard to write physical comedy. That being said, I think she did a pretty good job. I would definitely read another book by this author. It's set at New Year's, so I read it kind of right after New Year's. It was the time to read it. Really enjoyed it. And yeah, it was a fun read for the beginning of January. Then I read The Midnight Princess by Kiera Dominguez, and this is book 3 in her Royals of Sonneberg series. I've read the previous 2 books in the last couple of years. Can't wait for book 4. Like, I am just so hooked on this series. It's set in a fictional country that kind of has like Nordic vibe, like somewhere around like Denmark, southern bit of Norway, kind of a thing. Like that whole part of Europe is where this seems like it's been squeezed into, which I really like because a lot of royal romance, fictional royal romance novels are set in an alternate version of England, or they're set in somewhere that is supposed to be like France or something like that. So it's just nice to see something a little bit more Nordic, Scandinavian, Northern Europe, kind of like that. And yeah, it's just each book is going through the different siblings, and I think book 3 is probably my favorite one so far because I relate to the main character, the sister in book 3, more than I've related to the sisters in the previous 2 books. So really, really enjoyed that. Then I read Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Faeries, and this is book 1 in the Emily Wilde series by Heather Fawcett. Book 2 is already out. Book 3 comes out at the end of February. I will definitely read Book 2 and Book 3 at some point. I don't know if I'll get to them this winter because I do feel like these are very wintry reads, or at least Book 1 was. You all can let me know about Book 2 if you've read Book 2, and I need to see like about Book 3. I might wait until Book 3 is out and then read 2 and 3 back to back later this year or the beginning of next year. I just feel like these are just really nice when it's a little bit cold and wintry outside and you're cozy inside. I don't normally like fairies and like books about fairies. I tend to avoid them. Fairies just aren't really my fantasy creature of choice. Give me witches and vampires and I'll be happy. Fairies, a little bit less so. Fairies and dragons. And I feel like fairies and dragons are very, very popular right now. But I think because this is such a cozy fantasy and not like any of the other like romantasy books that are really popular right now. So I actually really liked the fairies, the fairy element in here because it's also rooted in academic research. There's footnotes in this book, which there's also footnotes in Babel. I love that. The academic in me, yes, give me all the extra information, give me all the footnotes. And so the footnotes are all, I'm assuming the footnotes are mostly made up research, but it's like little footnotes by Emily Wilde, not the author of the book, Heather Fawcett, but the footnotes are like Emily Wilde giving more context to the things she's writing down in her research journal. So I loved it. There's adventure, there's romance, there's fairies, there's lots of wintry vibes. It feels very Icelandic, although the book says that the place she is traveling to is not far from London and is an island off like near Norway, which Iceland isn't probably that far from England, but it's not close to Norway. So I was a little bit confused about that because then all the names, all the character names and place names are very Icelandic, but it's definitely got that Nordic vibe. So loved that. So that was, I'm losing count of what number of book that was. That was around the middle of January. Then we switched back to Kindle for the rest of the reads. I think that was book 7. Then I read You Had Me At Chateau by Portia Macintosh. Really enjoyed this. Cute premise. Not quite love triangle, but sort of love triangle, but you kind of know, I kind of knew who she was going to end up with, so it didn't really feel like a love triangle. But very wintry vibes, set in a cozy like alpine village. The main character staying in the chateau, but there's like the chalet area of the ski resort, and she's an author on a writing retreat. I love the author component of it and just a main character who's an author. I always love that. So yeah, really cute, fun read, really fast paced, really enjoyed that one. Then my third to last read is Never Ever You by Sarah Echavarre, if I'm pronouncing that right. I bought it because the cover was pretty and because it was clearly set in London. That will get me every time. I was a little unsure about the premise because basically it's like a time slip. It's kind of like a Groundhog Day premise, but instead of reliving the same day, she's reliving the previous year backwards, day by day. But she doesn't remember the past year. So she goes to sleep one night, she wakes up, it's a year later, her entire life has changed. The person that she was married to, she's not married to. The person that felt like her mortal enemy is now the person that she's involved with. She has no clue what's going on. So she's reliving each day, going backwards and slowly piecing together what happened in that year and how her life fell apart. I've read a lot of books where characters wake up in alternate versions of their life, or they wake up and they're reliving the same day over and over. They're very easy books to get wrong and like to not do well. I thought that with the like double difficulty of not only is it kind of in that vein of reliving a day or trying to piece together something like because you've got amnesia or you wake up in an alternate version of your life, whatever, there's the complexity of just that plot in general. But then the idea of reliving a year of your life backwards, the author does it very well, and I found it very compellingly written. There is comedy in it, there's drama in it, there's a lot of mystery in it, and Babel's my favorite. This is probably, like, I'm looking through all the 11 books I read this month. Babel's my favorite, and this is probably my second favorite read. I just thought it was so clever and so engaging, and a similar trope and like plot premise that I've read and that I like, but done ever so slightly different, that it really kept me engaged in trying to figure out what's going to happen and how is this all going to end. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. So the second to last book I read in January is Last Dance, Second Chance by the Emma Bennett. Some of you might know her here on YouTube. She is one of my favorite indie romance authors. She now publishes with an independent publisher, so I still classify Emma as an indie author. Emma, you can let me know if you don't want me to consider you an indie author anymore, but I feel like you are. And this book was just really sweet. It was really charming. A ballerina in New York goes back to surprise her family, and there's some confusion, so her family can't actually stay for the time that she's visiting. She ends up on her own house sitting and dog sitting while they go off on a pre-planned holiday that she hadn't really known about or something like that. Ends up with an injury, breaking her foot, so now she's questioning, will she be able to dance again? There's a cute doctor she's starting to have feelings for, someone she knew back in elementary school. It was just really cute. Really enjoyed it. Cute dogs are in the book, which always makes a book better. And I just really like Emma's writing. Her books are just always super cozy, super relaxed, very comforting, just lighthearted romance reads. And yeah, we'll always sing Emma's praises on this channel. And then the last book I read in January is The Romance Library by Olivia Spring. Olivia is another indie turned traditional / hybrid author. I know she's still indie publishing some books, and then this book is one of the books that is part of her publishing deal. So super happy for Olivia. Olivia is not on YouTube, but I follow her on Instagram, and I love everything I've read. I think this is like the 5th book I've read from her, and every book I read of hers I really enjoy. There's another book, this is book 1 of a new series, so I can't wait for book 2 to come out, but then there's some characters in here that are hinting at another book that she had written, so she does a lot of like interconnected. There's 2 characters in this book that have their own books in other series, so definitely want to go back and read some of those. And yeah, it's long story short, girl gets an opportunity to buy a building and open up a romance library / bookstore, and there's an inheritance involved, but there's competition for the building that she needs to secure. So it's enemies to lovers, book lovers trope. Oh yeah, spicy, definitely steamy. I think Never Ever You had some steam in it, and did the Rewind? I don't know. Romance Library was definitely the steamiest one I read all month, so just bear that in mind. There is a like steam warning there, but yeah, loved it. Absolutely loved it. So those are the 11 books I read in January. Now, a few books that are on my like unofficial TBR for February. So I have already started listening to an audiobook. I'm currently listening to Sensitive, which is a book about being a highly sensitive person. So I'm currently listening to that on audio in the mornings while I'm hiking, because I'm finding that my brain is just feeling a little bit overloaded and I'm thinking too much. And so if I'm just listening to music, my mind wanders and I start thinking about all the things that I just don't want to think about on my morning hike. So I'm giving audiobooks a try in the morning, just so that my thoughts are directed to something a little bit more neutral. And I'm really enjoying that book so far. I've also started reading a book on my Kindle that I cannot remember the name of just yet. I will keep you posted. There's a few books that I've downloaded to my Kindle, so I'm not going to go into all the Kindle books because that will just make this video really long, but I will mention them in the next book chat video that we do. But there are some physical books that I would like to try to read this month, and this is one reason why I'm thinking February might not have as high of a book count, because I'm not aiming to read a ton of books this month. I would be happy if these are the only books I read this month. And I want to start getting my brain back to a place where I'm reading books that I'm genuinely interested in, and not just reading books that I think I can get through quickly so that I can read more books in a year. So in no particular order, because I'm still figuring out when I want to start reading things. This week is a bit stressful, and I'm thinking that light fluffy romances on my Kindle are what my brain needs this week. But I think next week I'm going to shift to physical books again. Being February and romance month, if we want to call it that, I would really like to reread Persuasion. I bought this beautiful edition of Persuasion in Bath at the No. 1 Royal Crescent Museum back in May when my mom and I were there. I just have a really little like mass trade paperback, like the even smaller version paperback. And so it is a little bit hard to read. The print is kind of small, and it's hard to like open up the pages on that one because it's such a small bound book. So this book though, I won't lie, it almost feels too pretty to read. The pages are like glossy pages, and I feel like I just feel like it's a display book, but I am going to read it. I think it would be really nice to reread this book. I haven't read it in years, and so to reread it in a beautiful edition, bought in a beautiful place that will just remind me every time I pick up this book, it will remind me of the day Mom and I spent in Bath. So yeah, I think I want to reread this month. This will probably be a slower read. I don't think I'm going... Jane Austen is not something that I normally tear my way through, but I'm open to that, and I'm willing for that in February. Then definitely want to read this sooner rather than later, but I just want to be in the right headspace. I hauled this book in the last vlog. This is Blood Over Brighthaven by M.L. Wong. I had heard about it from another YouTuber who had previously raved about Babel, and then she started raving about this book. They sound slightly similar topics, similar themes, and what that creator had been talking about. Everything that she loved about this book were also things that she had loved about this book, and I'm not ready to like step away from these themes, so I'm really curious about this one. And yeah, can't wait to read this. We'll definitely keep you updated in the vlogs how I do with this one and what I think, and then it'll be in a future one of these videos if you like them and if I continue to do these videos. And then the last book that I want to try to read this month, and this is another nonfiction book, but I started reading it last year and I got probably about a sixth of the way through it. So I got through the first couple chapters. I'm up to page 49. It's a nonfiction book, and it's called Doppelganger, A Trip into the Mirror World by Naomi Klein. So this goes back to my academic days. Basically, there are two Naomis, and I don't know how much I really want to get into this, but basically Naomi Klein, there's another Naomi who is also a scholar, also a writer in the like public commentary space. Like both of them kind of cross academic research and public scholarship. I'd say they're probably both more known for their public scholarship, and most of their books are books that are geared towards the public, not other academics. But as an academic, I've cited from both of them over the years, and they look kind of similar. Their first names are the same. They often get confused. Even I've been guilty when I was in grad school of like switching up which Naomi I was actually talking about and confusing their research. The other Naomi has gone down the kind of far right rabbit hole conspiracy theory, and people will be talking about her but tagging this Naomi, Naomi Klein, in posts online and being very critical of Naomi Klein, but they're really talking about the other Naomi. And so this whole book is just what happens when you are constantly confused with someone who is so diametrically opposite of you, but the general public just can't differentiate between the two. So it's almost got a bit of like Black Mirror thriller type vibes to it. Like for a nonfiction, it's so far very gripping and very compelling. I was trying to read it while reading other things, and I need to just sit down and read this as its own book, not while trying to read romance novels and things like that. So yeah, I really, it did start gripping me, and I realized I needed to just kind of put it aside until I could just focus on this book. So I would like to try to read this month. And yeah, that's something I'm very, very interested to read. So that's my rough TBR for February. I feel like 3 physical books, and then we'll just see what Kindle books pop up in between those, and then the 1 audiobook. I feel like that's pretty realistic. I think I can get through these 3, and then if I can slip in some Kindle romance reads in between or at the end of reading these 3, then that'll be good too. So yeah, that's my reading plans for February, and that's what I read in January. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. I'm gonna wrap it up here because I feel like it's gotten a little bit longer than I had wanted, but I hope you've enjoyed it. If you did, give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you're not subscribed. Let me know in the comments if you like these book videos, if you want to see me do more of these. I'm happy to do them even if they don't perform as well, as long as those of you who watch them actually enjoy them. So let me know, and then let me know what was your favorite book that you read in January. Mine was Babel. And what is 1 book on your TBR for February that you would really like to try to read? I know that Blood Over Brighthaven is definitely getting read this month. Absolutely. I hope I have been in focus. I'm just noticing that maybe I wasn't, but I think I was. I hope I was. The lighting is definitely starting to get weird as more sunlight is coming in through my balcony. But yeah, anyway, I'm going to wrap this up here. Let's chat books down in the comments, and I will see you all very soon on Monday in the next vlog. Thank you very much for watching today. Bye!